Hi, third grade teachers. This is Desiree, and we are going to work together and take some time to calibrate the narrative full write performance tasks that were given to your students. So let's get started. What you will do together will be first to access the tools for calibration. Almost all of the material you'll need has been digitized and available on the local and state assessment site. You'll hopefully gain some familiarity with exemplar papers published by Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium for third grade. You will have some time to practice yourself checking how well you align to the rubric with some unscored papers in a check set. And if time allows, you will work together as a group to calibrate a piece of student work collaboratively. So you will need, each of you, a laptop, a copy of a printed version of the narrative rubric from SBAC, as well as some note-taking items, a piece of paper, something to write with. You'll need a place to record your scores for the check set. So the first item that you are going to go into is the calibration guide. This calibration guide has the stem for the item that was given to the third graders this year. It also has the 3 rubrics that Smarter Balanced uses to score. Along with that, you have a conventions chart to help remember what the expectations are for third graders as far as the language standards. An item that's new are condition codes. Sometimes students don't write to the prompt at all, and so there are some condition codes that Sun has allowed to be entered into Illuminate, as well as a page of targets, how this assessment links to the overall summative assessment that students will take at the end of the year. So let me show you where that calibration guide is. On the local and state assessment site, you see on the left side, after the testing timeline and schedule, the pages for the 16-17 interim assessment. Trimester 1, I'm going to head down to third grade and click on that page. I'm going to need to scroll past the directions for the task as well as rostering in the rubric. Those were used to give the students the task. I'm going to scroll past the math window to the calibration material. And don't get too scared. A lot of these are short as we could make them. So item 1 is the narrative calibration guide. Will you please go ahead and open that PDF? And I'm going to ask you to take some time now to read that performance task, examine those rubrics and the conventions chart to review expectations. So just becoming familiar again with what the students were asked to do and how it will be scored. Try to complete your reading of this material in about 10 to 15 minutes. So will you please go ahead and pause the screencast here, do that reading, and then you can start playing it again. Thank you for doing that, teachers. So let's just quickly overview what you read. Smarter Balanced scores these tasks along 3 traits. The first you saw was organization and purpose with a 4-point possible scale. The second rubric is development and elaboration with the same 4-point scale. And the last is for conventions, and that has 2 possible points, but 3 scale, a 0, 1, or 2 possible. When we think about conventions, we really aren't looking for item by item errors, but really variety, severity, and density. Variety speaking to, is the student making varieties of errors? They have errors in grammar and spelling and punctuation. That would be variety. Severity, are they making mistakes that a kindergarten students should have control of. Those are severe errors. And density. How much of the composition had error? 10%, 50%? So we really want to think along those lines when using the convention rubric. And elaborative technique in narrative. SBAC defines it as developing setting, character, event, and ideas with the selection of pertinent, enriching details, integrating them smoothly into the narrative flow. They highlighted 3 Ds: details, description, and dialogue. So that's what we want to hold in mind for that second development elaboration rubric. And I hope you notice the line on that page. The use of sources is to be loosely interpreted for narrative. This is not a task where they were expected to quote from or lift sections of those reading selections at all. As long as they loosely use the information, it is considered taken into the narrative. So now let's move into some practice time. You have exemplars for each rubric on the local and state assessment site. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to really read through them to start understanding how the papers and the rubrics align to each other. So back on the local and state assessment site, item 2 is your anchor set for the organization purpose rubric. Item 3 is the anchor set for the development elaboration rubric. And item 4 is the anchor set for the conventions rubric. So will you please work through items 2, 3, and 4, trying to understand how the papers and the rubrics align with each other, and try to complete that task in about 15 to 20 minutes. So go ahead and pause the screencast here. Thank you, teachers, for reading through those exemplars. I know that the exemplars do not line up neatly with the performance tasks that your students were given. So let's remember that more and more exemplars are being released by Smarter Balanced, and you see here on this chart items that we have this year that we did not have last year. There is one new exemplar set with student responses available for each grade level. And the new set for 3rd grade is the opinion set. But the only narrative exemplars we have available so far are those various. I think there were Pilgrims and Furry Friends, a few different ones you saw in 3rd grade for narrative. So it is a bit of a stretch for you, and I keep looking, doing the best I can. This really is going to require that you transfer what you read in these exemplars and check sets onto the performance tasks that your students took this time, knowing that the rubric is the same, the expectation is the same, and so how did your students structure, organize, and elaborate on the task that they were asked to write to? Now is an opportunity for you to practice. You read through the exemplars. Now there is a check set for each rubric and an answer key for each rubric that relates directly to that check set. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to read through that check set, practice scoring with the rubric, and then use the answer key to see how close you were to Smarter Balanced scores for that check set. So back here at the local assessment site, there is a variety of check sets. Item 5 is the organization purpose check set. Item 7 is the development elaboration check set, and item 9 is the conventions check set. Directly under them are the answer keys for organization and purpose, item 6, item 8, development elaboration answer key, and item 10, this convention answer key. So will you please go ahead and take the next 20 to 25 minutes to work through items 5 through 10. And you can decide, since this is an independent task, if you would like to first score one check set and then review the answers for that check set and then move on to the next, or do all of the check sets first and then review it with all of the answer keys. I'll leave that decision up to you. Go ahead and pause the screencast here and take the time to do that. Thank you for working through those check sets, teachers. Just a quick reminder, scoring is not the same as grading. When we grade, we take into consideration all aspects of a student's progress. Scoring is one process for one moment in time. So here you are being asked to read, gather evidence from the writing sample, and find where that evidence correlates to the rubric to then determine a score. Remembering that each dimension has a lot of descriptors. You see just in one rubric that a 3 for organization and purpose has quite a few bullets that describe it. It is not completely holistic, but it's not item by item either. And because there are a limited number of points, 1 to 4, a 1 represents a range of performance. There are low ones and high ones. We don't want to work with a 999 point rubric. So we are going to continue to work on understanding the cut points between a 2 and a 3 or a 3 and a 4. And please remember that while there are a variety of descriptors for each score point, they don't have to all equally apply. We're not circling bullets here. The word to remember is preponderance. Where does the preponderance of evidence for this student's elaboration lie? Where does the preponderance of evidence for their organization lie? We are not circling bullets. Well, they got 3 3s, 2 2s, and 1 1. Let's average it out and find the score. That's not how this works. Remember, we want to look for preponderance. Now, teachers, I highly recommend that you spend some time together calibrating a piece of student work of your own. So I hope that you have thought about some random samples from your classroom. I know they're on Illuminate, and if time allows, 1, possibly up to 3 random samples from the set that the students took in Illuminate. Now, 3rd grade teachers, since the task your students wrote to was a bit different from the exemplars that you looked at, it's important that as you begin the calibration together, you go back into the local and state assessment site and access at the very bottom of that folder the 3rd grade narrative PT. That's the task your students wrote to. So using all of the information that you learned from reading those exemplars in the 3 rubric areas, open up that document, read through the task, and then project one of your student samples through a projector up on a screen where everyone can see, or if it's a small group of you, huddle close by one person's computer and work together to score that particular sample. It's really important that you as a grade level are calibrated, that you're using the same lens when you use those rubrics to score your student work. So will you please pause the video here and take about 15 up to 25 minutes to calibrate 1 to 2 pieces of student work together. Go ahead and do that now. Thank you, teachers. I hope this time was valuable to you and that you were able to grow a bit more in your understanding of SBAC's expectations in 3rd grade writing to narrative sources. If you have any questions or would like for me to clarify anything, please feel free to email me at the email address that appears here on the screen. I also wanted to remind you that at the literacy site, there are a variety of 3rd grade writing units in narrative, informational, and opinion writing with student checklists, teacher rubrics, student samples, conferring forms, day-by-day lesson plans, and resource packets for your use. So I highly encourage you to visit the literacy site and take advantage of those resources. Again, thank you for all of the hard work you do and how much you benefit the students who are in your classrooms. Happy writing!